friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Jump for Joy. I'll also be using the little baby critters from Mom Plus Me and the Echo Park Celebrate Autumn 6x6 pattern paper pad. I've stamped my images out on some Copic friendly cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers today. I've also chosen my base print pattern paper, and I've tucked that off to the side so that I can color my images to match. I'm starting with my fox, and for her I'm using YR04, YR07, and YR09. I'm beginning with my YR09, and I'm coloring in my shadowed areas, mainly on the left-hand side of the body. I'm going to have my light source in the center of the card today, so I'll be shading the critters in the direction that they're facing. So then I'm coming in with the YR07 and blending out that YR09 just a bit. I'm not being too particular about going to the end of the little paws and things because I plan to add a different color on top of that. But for the parts that I want to be orange, I'm also going to blend out with that YR04. I'm saving some white patches on the belly, and of course leaving the tip of the tail for white as well. The baby fox I'm going to color exactly the same. I'm just doing the shadows a little bit different since she's sort of facing forward. Her shadows are going to be on either side of her body, with the center being the lightest area. So again, started with the YR09 and then blended with the YR07, and then the YR04 is going to be my lightest shade. And then her tail is going to be darkest, closest to her body since it's tucked behind her. And then the higher it goes away from her, the lighter it gets. I'm also going to use the YR04 to color in the owl's beaks, and I forgot to do their feet right now, but I will go back and do that later. And then while I'm at it, I'm also going to color in some of my leaves. I'll be doing that for each of my elements, and probably just showing one of each, depending, but I'll be coloring several, and they're all just the same. So for the white areas of the fox's body, I'm going to use the YR000 to just add a little bit of color into those areas. I want them to stay looking white, but I want there to just be a little bit of definition. So I picked something that was in the same color family, and then I used a little bit of colorless blender to soften that out. For the owls, I'll be using E70, E71, E74, E77, and E79. I'm starting with the E79 on the outside of the mama owl's body. I'm just laying in the shadows again in the direction that she's facing. So since she's facing left, her shadows are going to be on the right. And that also is depending on where I want to put her on the card. I knew that she would be on the right-hand side of the card, so the light source makes sense. So I'm blending out with the E77, and then I'll add a little bit of that E77 to the baby owl as well. I'm going to skip the E79 on the baby just to have her be just a little bit of a softer shade. Then I'm using the E74 to finish off the outside of the mama owl's body, and I'll also finish off the baby owl with that. So I just used the E74 and E77 on the baby. Then I'm going to bring in the E71 for the center part of the mama owl. I'm going to outline her little feathers on her belly, and then I'll shade the baby owl with that as well. Then I'm going to bring in the E70 and soften up that E71. My intention had been to fill in the rest of the owl's bellies with that E70, but I realized it was going to be a little too dark for what I was going for, so I decided to add in an extra shade. So I'm using E40, and this is just a really pale color that is going to work with those E70s and just make the center of their bellies look a little bit softer. Before I put those markers away, I'm going to take the E74 and add some of that to the Mama Owl's ears, and I'll also add some to each of her paws. Like I mentioned earlier, I had saved some space for that, and I'll also add it to the baby fox's front paws. I skipped over the coloring of the brown leaves and I'm moving on to some yellow ones, and for those I'm using Y32, Y35, and Y38. Starting with the Y38 and doing my shadows with those, I'm just picking 3 random leaves in the pile that aren't touching each other, and starting with the Y38 and then blending with the Y35. And then the Y32 is going to be my highlighted shade. And there's really no trick to this. I'm just trying to add the shadows where another leaf is overlapping. Then I'm moving on to my red combo, and for that I'm using R46, R56, and R59. If you can see on that pattern paper, I'm trying to incorporate all the colors that are included on that pattern paper into my leaf pile, with the exception of the green. I left off the green leaves since I will have green grass. So again, just starting with that R59, I added my shadows where I thought that they would go in relation to the other leaves on the pile, and then I blended out with the R56. And then last, I'm going to come in with that R46. So this is just a little bit of a deeper red than my usual favorite combo, but I thought it would go well with that pattern paper. For my turquoise leaves, I'm using BG11, BG13, and BG18. I started with the BG18, which gives it that kind of it's a more muted fallish tone as opposed to the other two, which are more bright shades. But I thought that would tie in nicely with the rest of the pile that we've got going on here. So I'm blending out with the BG13, and then I'm saving a little bit of room for that BG11. I'm having to work a little bit harder on these leaves because my BG markers are really dry. They need to be refilled, and that's just something I need to take the time to do. But so the less ink that's in the pen, the more you're going to have to work to get your blends to be nice and smooth. So all that's left is to finish off my rake, and for that I'm using YG63 and YG67. And for the handle, I just used the BG70 and BG71. And then I'm going to add a little RV10 to my Mama Fox's ears and give all of my critters some rosy cheeks. And then I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. So I used the Lawn Fawn Stitch Journaling Card die to trim out the elements of my focal panel, and also the Simple Stitch Hillside border for my grass. And now I'm going to take my leaf pile die and tape that down on the green panel, and then I'm going to run that through my Cuttlebug only up to where I had that post-it tape so that it creates a little flap. And before I add the rest of my elements, I wanted to stamp my sentiment and get that out of the way. So I'm using Lawn Fawn's Merman ink to stamp Jump for Joy. And I stamped that down a couple of times to get a really good impression, since that is a very similar shade to the background. And then while I have my Misty out, I'm also going to stamp the inside of my card. And for that I'm using Lawn Fawn's Walnut ink. And I'm stamping out the leaf pile again, as well as the hedgehog and the sentiment, "It's your birthday." So the whole card will read, "Jump for Joy, it's your birthday." So I thought that would just be cute and tie in the front of the card. So I'm creating a Lift the Flap card inspired by the board books that my boys used to love when they were toddlers. So the easiest way to do this was just to trace the inside of that die, and then I erased a little bit of those pencil marks so they weren't quite so noticeable, so I don't have to go back and erase them later. And then I'm going to take a couple of gray Copic markers and just darken that up to create like a little nest. The shades I'm using from bottom to top are W7, W5, and W3, but you could use any shades you have, any kind of like gray or brown tones. Just wanted it to be a little kind of, dark place where my baby critters were kind of playing hide and seek and hiding in the pile of leaves. So whatever kind of shadowy look you want to do. So I'm just building up the color by adding extra layers. Sometimes I'm using the chisel end of my marker to lay down a lot of color quickly, or switching to the brush tip as I get towards the top, since I want to be careful not to go any higher than that green hill. And just darkening it up until I have the look that I want. And then I'm going to take some liquid glue and glue the edges of my panel down. I'm using some Lawn Fawn liquid glue because this glue tube makes it nice and easy, and it does a really nice thin bead of glue. Just being sure to not put any glue anywhere near that flap so that it's able to lift up nice and easy. Then I'll grab my colored leaf pile and add some more liquid glue to the back of that, and then I'm going to line that up very carefully with the cut edge of that flap and press that down into place. And I can adhere the rest of my critters now as well. I'm adding the fox on the left hand side, and I left the glue off her tail since I knew it would hang over the edge. And then the mama owl will go over on the right. And then I'm going to give her the rake. So I had to push her up a little bit because I hadn't left quite enough room and I didn't want to overlap my sentiment. So I just adjusted her, but that's why I love using liquid glue, because it makes it really easy to do that. And then I'm going to add a couple of additional leaves that I colored, just kind of floating around the card to add to that nice fall leaf scene and the idea of them having jumped into the pile and hiding there. And then I can take my little baby fox and baby owl and add them underneath that flap into their little burrow. And I'm using the fox on the right and the owl on the left just to make things a little bit different and spread that color around the page. And then I'll just set this panel aside to dry completely. So I wanted to use another pattern from this pattern paper pack to kind of break up some of that leaf pattern and just bring in a little bit more of a bold color. So I'm flipping through and seeing what I might like to add. And in the end, I decided to go with one of the plaid prints that's towards the beginning. It's kind of a red and white plaid. So I'm going to just tear that out, and then I'm going to trim these down to size. I used the Lawn Fawn outside in stitch rectangle die to trim out both of those pattern papers, and then I put them together in my paper trimmer and trim those out, so I actually have enough to make 2 separate cards. So I decided to go with the slightly larger of the leaf print for this one, and I'm going to adhere that down at the top, just leaving a little bit of a border since that die trims off about 1/8 of an inch around the outside edge. And then I'll add the red plaid down at the bottom, just butting those up together perfectly. I've added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll just peel off those release papers and then I'll center that on the card. And once I have it exactly where I want it, I'll press that down into place. I wanted that lift the flap feature to really take center stage, so I decided not to add any more embellishment. So there's another look at how that works and another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete our card for today. So I hope you guys enjoy this fun interactive card design. It really makes me want to take another look at my Lawn Fawn images and see what other things I could use to make a little flap and what other little critters or elements that I could hide behind them. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you felt inspired, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, or you can always subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that already. Here's 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy, so hopefully those will tide you over until my next one. Until then, I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.